Okay, welcome to the September 14th informational meeting for the RSU 14 Withdrawal Committee. A couple of ground rules here. People coming in on the Zoom will be muted. Use the raise hand thing, which you'll find on your screen there, and Sue will let people come in and then queue up the next one after that. And then you'll be muted after the questions are asked. We'll start with an introduction, kind of an overview, but with Joe on where, how the thing came up, where we are. Then when we get into the budget areas, Marshall will take over. I think there'll be a couple of comments after that, and then we'll open up for question and answer, and we'll go till we've got no more questions. So, Sue, if you want to start the PowerPoint.
All right, so you go to the second slide, please. All right, so Raymond is going to vote this November, on November 3rd. So I finally got the date right. It's going to be an important choice in the education of pre-K through grade 12 students. Raymond has been a part of the RSU 14 with Wyndham for the past 10 years. This process for withdrawal was brought forth by Raymond citizens who believe that Raymond will have more control, a better educational opportunity for students, and a return to when Raymond was a single-member school unit. Next slide, Sue. Raymond is once again in charge of their future with it. These are the reasons for withdrawal. Raymond is once again in charge of their future with their own school committee. Currently, Raymond is in a minority position on the RSU board. Raymond's members do not have enough votes to stop or overturn any decisions on Wyndham initiatives. Look at the Wyndham initiative for the bus garage that Raymond taxpayers pay for, but get no return from, since buses are kept in Raymond and Raymond drivers do not get to use the locker room. Wyndham needs middle school space for students, yet they refuse to use space available in Raymond, choosing to lease portables instead at a cost to taxpayers. This demonstrates that we are a one-way RSU and not taking a holistic approach to utilizing available space. Withdrawal will protect Raymond schools when budgets get challenging and consolidation is proposed. We functioned very well as a standalone unit in the past. Raymond will maintain school choice and still have a contract with Wyndham so students can continue to attend school there. That's very important. There's a 10-year contract with Wyndham, so Raymond students will continue going to Wyndham High School if they choose to go there. The budget committee of the withdrawal process believes Raymond can add pre-K while reducing costs. Now, it's been brought up that pre-K is in the RSU 14 budget. How did we get here? Wyndham wanted to build a new middle school and not send students to Raymond during small middle school. Raymond taxpayers are going to have to pay for the middle school. The RSU board was looking at close down Jordan Small School as an option. In the last withdrawal proposal back in 2014, an agreement was reached between Raymond Select Board and the RSU. Raymond would pay a lesser percentage of total costs since our total students as a percentage was less than what we were paying in costs, meaning Raymond only has, I believe, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, 20% of the total student population in the RSU, yet we are paying 35% of the costs. Any new construction would be paid by the town where the construction was taking place. Wyndham would pay any new construction or repairs for anything in Wyndham, and Raymond would do the same. Wyndham decided to build a new garage for Public Works and lease part of that garage to the RSU for bus storage and maintenance. Indirectly, the taxpayers of Raymond were going to be subsidizing a new garage built in Wyndham for the town, not the RSU. The RSU purchased modulars to use instead of sending students to Jordan Small Middle School. The Raymond Select Board asked to meet with the RSU board and their attorney. They were told there would be no meeting and no questions were answered as to the scheme of building the new garage. This caused a petition to be taken out and a vote on withdrawal to occur. Post-withdrawal, Raymond will guarantee current staffing levels and allow all staff to continue with their current benefits. The budget for withdrawal provides for a school resource officer and free breakfast and lunch for all K-4 students. It also includes all programs currently at RSU 14. Cost sharing contract is up for negotiation. As I said previously, it is currently at 65% Wyndham, 35% Raymond. Raymond pays a higher share financially than is the proportion of students. Raymond's share is well over $10 million and growing. Raymond will continue to pay more because of our state property valuation. If Raymond votes to withdraw, maybe there will be a sense of community and parents and community members will volunteer more time. Now, this was challenged in the last meeting. Raymond has always had a lot of volunteerism, and we just think it will continue and maybe it will grow, maybe it will be the same, but we think it's a point to note. If Raymond votes to withdraw, the new school board will be voted on in January to prepare for the July 1st start date. Wyndham High School will be a school of guaranteed acceptance. There will still be school choice available. To date, 39 school units have withdrawn from their districts and are operating their own LEAs. There will be a sufficient budget to hire staff in order to ensure an appropriate transition. And before we get to the budget, I just want to say at the last meeting, it seemed like there was a lot of budget questions and not enough of a global discussion of whether or not Raymond standing on its own as its own school unit would have more say. The budget will be voted on by the new school committee if you withdraw. Everything we are stating right now that everything that you have right now is going to continue going forward. Wyndham High School will still be your choice of guaranteed acceptance, meaning you are guaranteed to go to Wyndham High School if that's what you want to do and take advantage of the programs at Wyndham High School. So Marshall, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Joe. My name is Marshall Bullock and I represent the budget subcommittee for the withdrawal committee. And before I get into the points here, I'd just like to explain the process. And that is, we looked at the RSU 14 version 9 budget, which was approved by their school board, I believe in April of 2020. I'm not sure the exact date. In that budget were costs directly related to the Raymond schools, RES and Jordan Small. We gleaned those numbers out and consolidated them into the documents that you will see. So that is the foundation of the budget. There are only 3 areas that I have made any adjustments, and I'll go through those as they come up. So getting to the major points, the secondary costs, which are school classes 9 to 12, including special education, have been reduced to the estimated state tuition rate. School choice remains in effect. And the differential, which means that the differential between the tuition rate and the rate that Hebron or North Yarmouth or whatever school they go to would charge, that averages to be $10,000 a year. Point number two, $140,000 has been added for the cost of a school resource officer for both campuses. This is a quote directly from Sheriff Kevin Joyce. Wyndham may or may not have a school resource officer. If they do, that's fine, but that officer, because he works for the Wyndham Police Department, will not be able to come to Raymond. Our jurisdiction for that area is Cumberland County Sheriff's Department. We've added $180,000 for nutrition to provide free breakfast and lunch for K-4 grades. This is a gross amount. It does not include any refunds that would come to us from the federal government. I understand the 75 cents, I think, per lunch. And it also does not include, lost my train of thought there. Sorry, I'll remember in a second. The fourth point, if the budget submitted by the Raymond administration remains in full effect, that means that whatever is in version 9, Director 51, which is Raymond Elementary, and Director 71, which is Jordan Small, have been pulled out and separated on the website. The V9 budget is on the website, and those two have been pulled out. Please do not think that that is the limit. It is not. The entire V9 budget is been reviewed. So that's available for you to review on the website. All services and programs currently in existence will carry forward. They have been adjusted upward to account for the fiscal year change to 21-22. Number 5, subtractions have been made from the RSU 14 V9 budget and maintenance and facilities account to eliminate those non-recurring costs that will be expended in the FY 2021 fiscal year. We estimate those to be 109. Most of those, I were told by RSU administration that those are security enhancements to the buildings. Additions to staff have been partially carried through pre-withdrawal expenses. This includes, and we'll see later, a superintendent, a special ed director, and a business manager. An increase in the budget to reflect the positions that may be hired after 7/1/21. The school board assumes 5 seats with appropriate stipends and insurances. And I want to clear up one point here. The reason why I chose 5 to do this is because, with the exception of one board in Raymond, all others have 5 members. Additionally, the original Raymond School Department had a 5-member board. So that was my target number. This will be a decision made later by the board itself. You can go to 7. I would recommend 5 as a minimum. The pre-K assumes 20 students, 5 of which are identified and 3 staff. And I want to talk about this a little bit. We understand that the RSU was given 32 pre-K slots through some type of federal grant. 8 of those were reserved for Raymond students. We have increased that to 20. My suggestion in looking at all the other local towns, from Yarmouth all the way through to Oxford Hills, Wyndham Christian, you name it, Gray, Poland, they all have split staffs in the morning and in AM sessions and in PM sessions. This provides for 10 AM and 10 PM students with 3 educators. You can take a lead teacher and a part-time educator for the first session and the same thing in the second session. So that's how that number was arrived. Number 9, there will no longer be any shared employees. That was made clear to us early on. Additions to the staff budgets have been made to accommodate those shared employees that may wish to stay full-time in Raymond. If they choose not to do so, then the money is there to support a new hire. Next one, Sue, thank you. These are the numbers, the way they shake out, looking at version 9, and there are 3, that's good. There are 3 areas that I'll speak out, but for the first one is the pre-K kindergarten. We've talked about that. I guess last time around when I made this presentation, I used the wrong word on identified. What I mean by that is those 5 or so, which is about 20% of the student base, which may need a little bit of assistance in getting through the school system. That would be 132,000 set aside for that. The Raymond Elementary School budget remains intact. I have taken 54,000 out of Raymond administration budget because there was an item in there for an SRO. SRO, as you see, is later on in this particular budget, and the security enhancements. Jordan Small School remained intact. I added 3.5% to jump from FY 2021 to FY 21-22. Secondary tuition has been calculated for 182 students at the state tuition rate, and included there is an extra $10,000 per student for 17% of the for the secondary student number, which is 182. Co-curricular is in there. It was a line item that I understand the state wanted to see, and that is lifted directly out of the budget. Security is 140,000, as I've talked about before. That's Kevin Joyce. That's his quote. Assuming a 3-year contract, that'll drop down to around 95,000 for the second and third year. Kevin wants us to buy him a car for this process. Technology, the budget there was derived in combination with our tech guys and Wyndham's tech guys. Kevin Woodbury has determined that there's a list of equipment and software that we will need. Software includes anything from Versatrans to the grading system, to the attendance system, to the financial system, and so forth. And that's all in there. The CIA curriculum, instruction, and assessment is directly from the R9 budget. Nutrition, as I said before, it's 180,000 we put in. The way I got that number was $4.54 per student, 220 students, 177 days a year, and rounded it up to $180,000. There will be money coming back on that. I want everybody to understand that is a gross amount. The school board, 5 people. That includes stipends and insurances. Office of the Superintendent, we have recommended that there will be a 3/5 superintendent hired to run this system. There was quite a bit of discussion about that. So a minority thinks that there is no 3/5 superintendent available. So to cover for that, if we were forced to hire a 5/5, I have added $100,000 into the contingency, which is the last line here. The business office is 1 person, 1 full-time person, and any of the software requirements I've added into the technology figure. They will not reflect in the business department. Operation and maintenance of the building is a direct pull from V9. Special education is a direct pull from V9. It includes everything from OT to PT to psychology to speech to all the services that these young kids need. It also includes a $22,000 increase, which last session we had quite a discussion about a part-time, whatever, I called it a job coach. It was a community development officer or something. And in conversation I had with Randy Crockett, it's a small function at Jordan Small, but it is a function. So I put in there the cost for an Ed Tech 3, which would allow that person to transport students. Student transportation is the only number that you will not find in the version 9 budget. The way I arrived at this is that I found the fuel costs for the last fiscal year. We used 17,600 gallons of fuel, and I figured at $3.50 a gallon, 101,000 for maintenance and repairs, and the rest was salary. So the salaries are just a hair under 500,000 for that category. Additions to staff. To check my notes here. Additions to staff in the budget, not before the budget, would be 1 in transportation, 1 in facilities, 1 in technology, and 1 in food service. So that gives us a contingent, a total of the contingency I talked about before, 100,000 for a superintendent and 100,000 in case I made a mistake. So that brings the grand total to 10,816,000. The balance forward of 150,000 will come from whatever reserves the RSU shares with us. The state funds is a direct reimbursement from 45% for the student special ed program, which gives us a local funds demand of $9.942 million. If we could have the next slide, Sue. This is where the budget impacts the town of Raymond directly. Looking at the last 4 years of the RSU, they've averaged 4.7% increase per year. Assuming that holds true this time around, our budget for this fiscal year, 21-22, will be $11.235 million. The estimated budget after withdrawal, the savings in secondary education, which will be paid at the state tuition rate, no payments for the assistant superintendent and the Katahdin School. The assistant superintendent for Raymond does not need to be that heavy. It's mostly business operations. Alignment of some of the facilities costs have been included, and all existing programs remain in effect. So that budget works out to be $9.632 million for the town of Raymond. I've added in 140,000 for resource officer and the K4 breakfast lunch at 180,000 because I believe that those will require board approval. Assuming that, the budget will be 9.42 million, and the savings to the town of Raymond in withdrawal will be 1.602 million. The additions to staff are on the bottom of that page. 3 in administration. That's the superintendent, the special ed director, and the business manager. 2 in special ed, and 1 in facilities, transportation, technology, and food services each. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to you, Rolf. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mark, I don't know if you want to weigh in a little bit because you've helped develop these budgets in the past too, as far as what, the methodology used and how that is consistent across other ones that you've worked on.
Sure. Am I unmuted?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great. Yes, I thought the process that was used by the subcommittee was very thorough. They met, I know Marshall met with Randy, spent a considerable amount of time verifying the RES and John Small's budget. We met with the superintendent, who was extremely helpful, answered all our questions. What happens in this process in the districts I've worked with, the statute requires an estimated budget. It is not in any way a final budget, but it requires an exhibit in the withdrawal agreement to give the citizens an idea of what type of costs they may be facing. Now, when you take the situation in most school districts, the withdrawal committee doesn't have complete access to all the data, all the tables, charts for staff and so forth, workers' comp, you name it. So it is very wise to rely on that data as provided by the RSU. So I think that the process that Marshall and Kevin and I worked with them on was as thorough as you can be without having access to all the data that you'd have access when you have all the staff lists and all the related tables and charts when you put the final budget together. So, I mean, my experience has been, it varies from community to community. most of the communities are looking for withdrawal over a control issue, concerned oftentimes in many cases that they might lose a school, that'd be the last school in their community. So the issue is more control than financial. My normal advice to say, you know, as you work through this process, you know, as thorough as you can be, there are going to be some unexpected costs that, you know, that just come up, and many of those often are in the special ed area. So I think the fact that we have some contingency, and we don't want to have unrealistic you know, expectations about how much we're going to save, because we're going to have, I think Marshall's estimated $500,000 to $600,000 in transition costs, which is going to allow us, should the community withdraw, to be in great position to start the school district on July 1. So overall, I've been pleased with that process. I think that the involvement of the withdrawal committee, especially Marshall and Kevin as well, has been as thorough as I've seen in any of the previous experiences I've been involved with. So I know that people want to see an exact figure. Well, you're not going to see an exact figure until the school committee enacts a budget and has all the related data that it needs to make that final decision. So I think, unless there are questions, that's all I have to say.
Okay, I would like to add that thanks to Chris Howell, he was very free and open with the information and very responsive to the questions we asked. And for that reason, we have a pretty thorough budget. So thank you, Mr. Howell, if you're listening.
I agree. Absolutely agree.
Yeah, I think, Teresa, you had a couple of questions before we open it back up there.
I do. I didn't think Kate was going to be here tonight, so I wanted to run some questions by her. But since she is here tonight, then what I did, there she is. I said I'd like to have these asked on public and answered on public. So, Kate, I'm going to read you a question, all right?
I'm ready. I'm ready for him. I know him ahead of time. This is great.
I gave you the cheat sheet. All right. So last night, I mean, there was two issues that were pretty passionate. One is the Director of Community Connections, and the second one was the preschool. So I'm trying to educate myself on this and understand all this. So what exactly does a Director of Community Connections do?
Yes. So that job description, that person works in community relationship development. They also work on job shadowing and internship assistance, which I know a lot. It was in the Wyndham Eagle. She did a lot of that with some of our Jordan Small students, brought them to different businesses in Wyndham and Raymond, so that they could experience different careers that they might be interested in. Again, it just really exposes them to that. There is a lot of research out there that shows that kids really start to learn their aspirations post high school. In middle school, they start to identify themselves as where they can go in the future. So it's so important to do that early. She does some volunteer recruitment, and then she also does some, or that person, it happens to be a female right now, do some areas around grant writing. So our Director of Community Connections right now did write the two COPS grants that the districts did receive, and we received $590,000 with that. So and you know, there was a point a year or two ago, I can't exactly remember how many years it was, where that job was on the line, quite frankly, budget wise. We received multiple emails from folks in Raymond and Wyndham saying how critical that position was. And it wasn't just for high school kids. So it wasn't like if they went to Wyndham High School, they would be able to receive that. Again, she did a lot of work in Jordan Small. So that was really, really strongly supported. I would not like to see that position be cut. And I know that you-
Stay with that for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, we've added a $22,000 position for what I would call a job coach. You can call it what you want, but and that's in the budget. So
Yeah.
we're all set with that one.
And I guess I want to ask on that, because if it's what I think it is, I know when my kids were in school, Lynn Davis, which is the guidance counselor at the middle school, correct? Yes. She would invite all the people in from all over the town or their parents to come in, and they would bring in their job professions. And so it's kind of like that, but it's a different person.
Yeah, so I think really honestly, what you're seeing now is school counselors don't have time for that anymore. They are dealing with so many social and emotional issues with kids
Okay.
that they no longer have the time to do honestly, the stuff they really want to do this.
Right.
They want to do that sort of fun stuff and expose kids and see kids' eyes light up when they find a job that really ignites their passion. They can't do it anymore. I mean, there's a litany of social and emotional issues that are happening with kids. And to be quite frank with you, that this pandemic is only making that worse. I mean, it's going to become an even bigger issue. And yeah.
Right. So what about why wouldn't she not be, but I wrote him or her because I didn't know who the person is.
Yeah.
And the questions, why are they in the superintendent's budget and not in like the school budget for a partial amount, the high school for amount?
Yep. Yeah, and I misspoke. It was not the superintendent's budget. It's in the assistant superintendent's budget. So that was my error on that one. My apologies. And clearly you can see that I've asked Chris for some of these answers. So it's for a position that covers multiple categories or multiple buildings. Sorry, it's not uncommon for them to kind of be categorized as a district-wide position. So that job salary and benefits are under the assistant superintendent budget.
Well,
Okay.
just to be clear, we've now moved that to special education.
Yeah, it's not special education, but
That's where it'll be housed.
All right. So, okay. So, all right. Now going on to pre-K.
mm-hmm.
So I know I've talked to the school about this too. And it was, the comment was kind of, it was a no-brainer. It's my understanding that the school got a great grant to do the pre-K program.
So they actually did not receive a grant.
Is it, well, funds, state funds, some kind of funds? I'm using the wrong term. I know that. I think
that's right. So it was not a grant. So the funds were allocated through the state funding formula. If we had chosen not to do the program, the funds would have been removed from our state allocation. So essentially we were counting those towards our student count. If should Raymond do that, we would be a minimal receiver from the state, and we may not receive those pre-K funds, not a grant, the pre-K funds back from the state. And I know you are wondering too why it was in Raymond. The space in Raymond was the only space available in the district, and both Wyndham and Raymond students are accessing it. It was done on a lottery. It was done with a pretty fair representation of the population of Wyndham students and Raymond students. There is transportation that is provided.
Can we get that clarified? Because when it first started, there was going to be 3 places where the bus was going to be, and the parents had to be there. That's when the parents could not do that.
So
that was
I also would
early in it.
I would also argue though that there are no other. I mean, if a parent is bringing a child to a pre-K that they're paying for, they're transporting them. So it's unfortunate that there is someone who decided not to take advantage of the possibility of free pre-K because there wasn't public transportation when they may have to drive their child to a child care place anyways.
And I think because it was the drop off at 7 and the pickup was at 5, so they had to do that. So I just want to make sure that I wasn't wrong on that information.
I don't know that a pickup would be at 5 though for pre-K.
No, that's why they pick up. No, right. Yeah, I know what you mean.
They would be a puddle of mush by then.
Yes, they would. So this preschool, I know it's important, the pre-K, but I do know that I think it was pushed more this year because of that great funding that we got. I guess maybe if we didn't get that funding, I would maybe, and I hate to assume anything, that we wouldn't have pushed it this year because of all the COVID and everything. but I guess for the sake of all the arguments tonight, all the comments tonight, I do believe that it is put back in the budget for full
It
time.
is, and it is, well, not full time. I don't think Marshall has put full time in. He still even said that he believes half day is the best. And I would be more than happy to, not that you said it was the best, but that other towns are doing that. And I really would be more than happy to make a factual and research argument about why it really needs to be full day pre-K, which would be capped at 17 kids per the state 16 kids, excuse me, per the state requirement. So.
And that's all fine. And I have left 20 full-time plus 3 staff in the budget, which
So
is
we are
what
over.
you're asking for.
Right, we are over, which Kate said we can have no more than that. But the good news is the parents do have the options, you know, either now or later, and they also have other preschools that they can do with the longer hours. So, all right. So I think that was it.
Yeah.
Yes, cool. Thank you, Kate.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, then Sue, if is there people with hands raised?
There is not just now.
Yeah.
Right.
So again, if people have a question, do your raised, and it may be, you may have to see it over you may have to bring your chat up in order to see the raised hand option there. But if there's a question, then do the raised hand, and then
Rolf, I don't see where you could raise your hand.
if you,
But
maybe
if you open the chat, then at the chat area, you'll see.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see it now. Sorry
you
about
hit
that. It's in a different
participants?
spot than where I'm
Yeah.
used to it.
And the worst part is I think it's
Yep.
different on Apple. I think it's different on Apples than it is on Mac.
Yeah, no,
PC.
it's in a different spot than I'm used to. My apologies.
And we do now have Jody Carroll who has her hand up. So Jody, I just clicked to unmute you.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Again, just a couple of questions that we didn't get to last week. One of the things, and thanks for the follow-up from last meeting. That's great continuity. Love that you've tied up some of those loose ends. Appreciate the dialogue and addition of the superintendent, full-time contingency. I think those are all great moves. I just want to make a general comment that I didn't have the chance to last meeting. I think the addition of free meals is a phenomenal add. Me personally, we feel also that the school resource officer is such a great add to this particular agreement. So I just want to make those two comments for those two things that don't exist right now. I know in the short term they might with the RSU 14, but I do love that those are suggested add-ons. My question, firstly, is there was a contentious disagreement about the new school board having to renegotiate the teacher contract. I'm not a teacher. I've done some subbing in the district in the last couple of years, but just trying to think about if we could get a clarification as to whether the new school board would have to do that, or if the current withdrawal agreement does address that. That was just one question that I didn't have answered in some of my emails. They seem to be contradicting in terms of who is going to be responsible, whether they would have representation or not. And that's really just me thinking as a parent as to the risks. And so that would be my first question, if that is something we could get answered tonight.
Mark, I think you had information regarding, what has to happen, how that has to happen. I mean, the one thing is that the bargaining unit from the RSU 14 cannot represent the new units. They would have to form their own unit, but any existing agreements remain intact. And then, Mark, you want to pick up on that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Right now, it looks like the withdrawal agreement says, I'm talking about teachers. Administrators go through 2023. So that contract remains in effect until 2023. The other two contracts are up. I think the anniversary is maybe July or August. But what typically happens when the contract is up, if a new contract is negotiated prior to withdrawal, usually that becomes the contract that the withdrawing unit would adhere to. Otherwise, the new school board would have to negotiate a contract. And to start off with, the current contract remains in effect, like it would in any situation where the withdrawal contract negotiations are not complete. So the new, if in fact the contract is up July 1, 2021, then the new 2021, then the new school board would have to negotiate a new contract for those people involved, those two groups involved. And Dan may want to add something to that as well.
Can't hear.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah. What Mark has said is accurate. If the withdrawal were to pass in November, and there is not a new collective bargaining agreement or an extension of the collective bargaining agreement in effect, then the new school committee, the new Raymond School Committee, would have authority to bargain for any contract that takes effect after the effective date of withdrawal next July 1st. But unless and until a new contract is negotiated, the current contract between the RSU and the association will remain in effect.
One thing I might, and I was a little remiss here in not introducing some people, but for people that didn't recognize who Dan and Mark are, Mark Eastman was a consultant at the RSU 14 Withdrawal Committee used during this, and he's worked on I can't remember the exact number, but more than 20 different withdrawal efforts and things like that. Is also a former superintendent and an educator, so he's brings that with him. And Dan Stockford is the attorney that we contracted with to help in any of the issues that come up there, as well as drafting helping to draft the withdrawal agreement. So just so people know who those two are, because you don't recognize them as Raymond people.
Thank you.
Janie Cummings will be next, if you're ready.
I couldn't hear you, Sue.
Janie Cummings is next.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I have a couple of questions about things in the budget. And one of them is, where is insurance, like liability, property liability, catastrophic insurance? Where is that?
It's in two areas, Janie. One is in the superintendent. I put in a figure for a liability in there,
Okay.
and most of it would be in facilities and maintenance.
Okay. And the lawyer fees?
Oh, that's a good question, Janie.
Legal fees are typically under school board, and I
Yeah.
think that's where they were put. Also, school board legal liability is under school board too.
Okay, but
I have the legal liability, but I don't think I put in a fee for actual legal fees. That's my error.
okay,
We can make a change on that sometime down the road.
okay. And just to another point, the community coordinator that you've put in special ed cannot be in the special ed budget because you're not special ed, so that they, when you're looking to get reimbursement or state funds, that's one of the reasons she can't be in special ed, because that would mean she could only work with special ed students, and she would work with
That's and not to be insulting to you, Janie, but that's a hair splitting issue, and that can be moved to RES or JM. It doesn't matter.
All right, that's
I
fine.
mean, the real question there is the money in there?
Yeah, we've provided for that individual. Yeah,
I
and I hear what you're saying, Jenny.
Yeah,
That's fine.
I just, trying to be a good steward. The budget that you submitted to the commissioner, was 11, basically 11,700,000, basically. And this one is $1.7 million less.
I made no, it's $1.1 million even, and I made a typo error in my first presentation,
Okay.
which was not part of this program. You know, I started this process a year ago, Janie.
Yeah.
And I worked on it most of the fall, and then I had to put it down for a month because I was looking at too many numbers.
Okay.
So then I picked it up again in January, and the nutrition process came in January, and the transportation process came in January. And then I hit a roadblock where I had to wait for your school system to approve their budget.
Yeah, we had 9.
Right. Yeah, and I know I painfully watched each one of them.
Yeah.
So then once we had that through, then I was able to make some sort of reasonable decisions on it. Okay.
So did you, in the high school secondary costs, you've included, can you tell me about how you included special ed costs there?
Sure. I need to get to page 403 in my notes.
Believe me, I understand.
We're estimating, I looked at Jordan Small's classes,
Right.
and then I estimated the rotation from Jordan Small to high school, eliminating the senior class this year and bringing in the freshman class and so forth and so on. So I wound up with 182 students.
Okay.
That includes off campus. From that number, in a discussion I had with administration, you take the tuition, plus I added $10,000 per student for that. So I have an extra, I think it was 17% I used, but I put 330,000 in the budget for those costs. And again, 17% sticks in my mind. Years back when I was in the business, it was 15. So I don't know what it is now. I'm sure it's gone up. So that's the number I used to get the special ed in secondary. The net cost would be, I'm sorry, 310,000 in special ed.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Now we assumed that the special ed director in Raymond would be responsible for the IEPs and so forth for our secondary students, wherever they might be. We assumed that.
Sure. That's what it was like always.
Yep.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out you're saying that that's a flat kind of dividing all the special needs students up. And
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I'm taking 17% of the total 912 population and adding a special ed factor to that.
Right. No, okay. So I guess what my question is that, you know, I know we have the state mandated tuition for a regular ed student.
Right.
A special ed student is whatever it costs.
Well, I understand that. This is a proposed budget. I had to put a number in there somewhere, Jenny.
Yeah, I get it. I just wanted to make
the-
sure we were talking apples to apples.
Yep. No, I think we are. Again, it's a proposed budget. The number I received was add 10,000 for special ed per student. And I was okay with that.
All right. Okay, I think that's all I have for this go round. I'm sure that other people want to speak, so after they do.
Thank you, Jenny.
So next is Grace Levitt.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Yeah.
You
Okay,
are.
good. First, just a couple of comments, and then I'll just do a couple of questions. I have a list here, though, but again, like the previous speaker, I don't want to take everybody's time. I can wait. First, thank you for posting the budget and the survey that we had been asking for a couple of months, month and a half anyway. So I appreciate that they're on the website now, and I could take a look at them. On the survey, I was wondering how the withdrawal committee used the results of that survey, which showed, I know you said that you were disappointed that there weren't that many people that responded, but there were 98 or so that responded, and the majority indicated they were opposed. Even when you add the ones that indicated they support and the ones that said they needed more information, it was still a large majority that were opposed to this. Did you use those results and the comments there in any way? That's my first question.
Comments were you know, the opposed, supported, you know, was one issue. The other was really looking at where those comments said, because that, you know, that really got to where were people's, you know, where were concerns. A lot of the concerns were they didn't have information yet, and that was understandable because we didn't have all the information at, you know, at the point that survey was done. Remember too that survey, if you look at the date stamps on that, the last people that responded into those were in March. So, you know, a lot of that was, well, we're looking for more information, or we don't know what the budget is yet, and things like that. So there was a lot of that could not be answered at that point. So it was logical that, you know, those would be concerns. But the others were, what were people, you know, what were they afraid they were going to lose? What did they want to see? So it was really the comment section that was more of import, because that kind of told you what people were looking to get for program, you know, for some programs, for some information and things like that.
Yes, I understand that the comments were more helpful. So those were looked at in terms of, especially the comments where it was talking about they didn't want to lose the breadth and depth of services that they have now with the larger school unit in the RSU. Those seem to be a fairly frequent comment. There were really just 16 that said they needed more information, and I didn't stop and note at what point they were spread out across the time span that people were responding to the survey. So you're saying the withdrawal committee
questions that were on there, so we can put those under the frequently asked questions. I went back to the beginning of the first meeting we had, and then I pulled up the survey and I pulled questions off of there regarding budget, that type of thing.
Okay, so you were saying that you did use those results.
Yes,
okay.
Because I wanted to answer. We want to make sure that we're putting it with all the other questions that are on there.
Can you talk about the technology piece? Because I've heard it said twice now that the town was doing some of that.
Right.
And so
you're bleeping out. I didn't hear that.
Look, the technology, I've heard twice that the town would be covering some of that cost or some of that work. And is that not then an increase to the taxpayer through the municipal side of the budget? Can you explain what technology we would have for the school system if we withdrew?
Okay, there's a couple of areas that come under, you know, come into technology. There's the, you know, first of all, any of the equipment that is there, that being the laptops and things like that, that is part of the separation agreement, and those what's there stays there. So from that standpoint, but there is in the budget a new position in technology, but there's an awful lot of backbone things like that is going to be taken care of on the town server side and things like that. But that overall budget also includes monies for outside people, but you know, the same type people that the town uses on the technology side, but a lot of the infrastructure side where we can make use of the town equipment. It made sense to use that because quite frankly, that, you know, you look at it from like just on the broadcast studio and things like that, that stuff all picks up under there, and actually RSU gets use of that when they use the studio there for things like that. So where it makes sense to be able to piggyback on the infrastructure that the town is putting in, it's done there. But then there was the adding to pay for outside and things like that too. Correct, Marshall?
Let me approach this from another standpoint, Grace, and telling you that in conjunction with the RSU Tech senior person and our senior person, they developed a program of the one-time hardware costs that we would need. And that would be in the range of 119,000. And I'm not sure what that includes. I know some of that would be security. I asked the question about cameras in the buses, and I never got a straight answer to that. I hope there are. And if not, I think some of that in there, but that would be an example of the hardware. And then there was the software, and I have 4 pages of software enhancements that will be Versatrans, the software needed in nutrition, and so forth and so on. And the one-time charge for that would have been 28,000, but there would be an annual ongoing fee charged to the school for 81,000. And then there would be enhancements to the servers. The website would be housed there. All the security arrangements would be housed there. And that was an annual cost of 105,000 with no upfront costs. And there's a lot more to it, Grace. Hopefully that answered that for you.
Actually, it didn't. That's not where I was talking at all about hardware or even software. It's more the personnel. And would not the town, whoever's doing the IT for the town, doesn't that then add to their workload? And even if the town is picking it up, isn't that then an increase to the taxpayer? It's just not showing in what you're showing for the school budget.
Yes, and we assumed that a lot of that would be handled by the hiring of the technology person, as I listed in the impact statement. That's a full-time position that would take some of that, and the business manager would take some of that. I feel that, well, according to Kevin, once that gets up and running, there's not that much exposure to the town.
There's no increase in the municipal side of the budget to help with any of this?
Right.
Nothing. It's already covered. No increase in Kevin's salary or anything like that.
Not to my knowledge, and that has not been raised.
Okay, but if there is, that should sort of be displayed, because basically the withdrawal committee is making the case this is saving Raymond taxpayers money. But if it's increasing something in the municipal side of the budget, I think that's a little bit misleading. Perhaps it isn't. So clarification on that would be helpful.
I hear that, and I was cognizant of that when I was doing this process.
Okay, so you're saying that as a staff person in the school,
right,
should there be a technology issue, which it happens every day and it throws everything into an absolute mess.
I'm sure
there would be somebody right there who not just, help with a laptop that a student's having trouble with, but a more significant issue with the server or something. This person is sort of on call from the town to deal with that so that school instruction can go on?
Yes.
And that's not any increase to the town? Okay.
Well, I can't use the word any increase, and nominal at best.
Okay, but nominal increases do sometimes add up. My other concern I want to just raise here is being very cautious about having EdTech 3s filling positions that currently are filled by someone with a professional certificate rather than an EdTech 3 authorization. For example, the library media specialist, do we have a certified library media specialist in the Raymond schools for this proposed school district if we withdraw, or is it being served by an EdTech 3? And you also mentioned the community, I forget the title, community connections person. You said that would be an EdTech 3 at 22,000. That's really, that's not even a livable wage for whoever's doing that job. And yeah, it might be part-time, but still, I would just caution going forward, using EdTech 3 salaries as a way to gauge what the costs would be, when really you likely would need somebody with a substantially higher salary there. And as far as the contracts go, I believe they're up in July and August. There's 2. There's the teacher contract, the professional staff, and there's also the education support professionals. So those would, I understand what you're saying when you say they might stay in place, but I would expect that people would be negotiating for at least some sort of a wage increase and a salary increase. And then there's also the issue of health insurance. So a newly elected school board would possibly have to be developing a budget that would pass at town meeting and would be able to be communicated out and get some hirings in place for some pretty important key staff, and then also be working at negotiating two very substantial contracts in terms of the percentage of staff that they cover. The administrators would be carried for a couple more years, but really the support staff and the teachers would be left wondering what's going to happen. As far as health insurance goes, I know all about experience ratings and things like that for school districts, and the smaller the school district, the more of an impact a higher experience rating can have on the health insurance. And so again, there's something that people need to consider as far as an RSU that's spread out over a much larger group. And so that could really be quite a cost increase depending. I mean, there's no way of knowing that. It's all wondering from year to year what happens, but it just seems like a lot of a risk taking here, and no way to really know how much more this is likely to cost. And as far as control goes, I'm going to fit in one more comment. I do have other questions, but again, I'll just fit one more thing in. I do not understand how losing all say for our high school students in terms of having a school board representation is beneficial. Yes, we would have, if we withdrew, we would have a school board that would have complete control over the pre-K-8, but we would have no say in the education of our high school students. And I know in the last meeting that Joe said, well, you don't have it now with the private schools. No, you don't. But you have it with the RSU. And right now, that's the majority of our students going there, and still would be the majority of our students going there. At least we'd be paying for the majority according to the withdrawal agreement you've agreed to. So we would be losing that control. So I think it's really a fallacy to say we'd have control when we'd have more control over one part. If you want to look at it that way, I don't really agree with that myself, but you would have no control over any of the 9 through 12 education of our students. And I'll wait my turn or wait till the next meeting. Thank you very much. And I do appreciate the different format for this also. It's working much better, although I think other people are still trying to call in too, and I don't know if they're having difficulty. Hopefully it's going well. Thank you.
Can I ask something, Marshall?
Yes.
I remember when we were talking about the withdrawal agreement, that we would have some startup costs.
Yes.
Are those in there?
They're not. They are not public.
Okay.
Do you have a specific question? I'm not trying to hold it back. I have them here. I just haven't put them on a website.
Nope. I think what I'm looking for is those startup costs. What's going to happen is the budget would drop some, is what I was thinking, if they're in that initial budget.
I'm sorry, I lost a word when you were talking. Say that again. I'm sorry.
You're not loud enough. No.
No, I didn't say that.
What I'm saying is that initial budget, I was thinking, because I know there is some startup costs, I was thinking that the budget that you have may be dropped down later a little lower, but that's not the budget that you're presenting, is what it is. You are presenting.
And I would not make that assumption.
Okay. Okay.
So next is someone who has called in on the phone. So I'm not sure the name. The phone number is 653-6548, and I've just clicked to unmute you. And I believe you'll need to do *6, I believe, to unmute yourself.
Can't get her unmuted or?
Well, I've clicked on mute several times, but it does require action on their part. And
Can we move on and come back to that perhaps later?
okay. So after that is Brian Walker.
Thank you.
Sue, it's *9 to unmute.
Oh,
That could be why.
Should I go ahead now or?
Yeah, go ahead, Brian. We'll go back to the phone one after you.
Mine is very quick, and it's not a response for tonight, and I put it into the chat, but it was just the request that possibly could we get the RSU or our RSU board members to respond to the presentation we just heard. There's 3 areas I'd be especially interested in. One is, are there specific places in the budget where they disagree with the numbers that were presented? Second thing, are there any omissions in the budget that you believe need to be added to reflect a fully accurate budget? And then the third thing was, besides the budget questions, what else would be lost by the withdrawal? Thank you.
And
Thank you,
Mr.
Brian.
Chair, I've already copied all of Brian's questions into an email and sent them to all the committee members.
Thanks so much, Sue.
Let me just say one thing, Brian. I'll give you a head start that anything that you need to see is in the version 9. It's 86 pages long, happy hunting, but it's all in there. So there's nothing that we are holding back. The other 2 questions we'll get to later.
We seem to have lost that phone call.
Yeah, you might have hung up, yeah.
Mhm.
So they may come back in if not, if whoever that was has a question that they want to pose, if they email that question to rsu.withdrawal@raymondmaine.org, that will go into the questions that we've been getting that'll be going in. Those answers will all be in the frequently asked questions and things like that. So if there is a specific question that they had and they can't get in, and same with anyone else, if they've got that, if they send those questions in, then we can get answers to those as well.
So Jody Carroll has questions.
Hello, I'm back. So I'm just hoping to draw on some institutional knowledge. One of the things that I love about the process, if people dig in and really just think for themselves, in my opinion, is that I've come up with 4 or 5 pages of reasons why the withdrawal makes a lot of great sense. And when I went in, I was thinking, I don't know what the answer is going to be, but in the end, that's where I landed. And then I thought, well, there's so many discussions, Facebook posts, contentious arguments, big feelings about a lot of things. And so I tried to sort of figure out, the last question I asked was in that same vein about the responsibility that the new board would have to represent negotiating a new agreement. I mean, I'm just trying to think of being socially responsible. These are the teachers that are teaching my kids. And so if I'm thinking under that umbrella, I'm thinking, I don't know anything about the process, the withdrawal committee, the board, everyone involved in this. Mark, Dan, you've got so much experience. I think that what I am left with, and I feel like some of my peers do as well, is there seems to be this doubt, and I can't really get my fingers around it. And I think it's because of a lack of experience. I've never been on a school board. I've never gone through this process. I'm a Canadian, so very different process there. I'll just say I've been completely blown away by everything that's happened since I've moved here with respect to education. So I would never go back for whatever it's worth. But having said that, can somebody help me just understand, how do I know who's going to run for the board? I mean, I'm not qualified. My husband and I are, we have our professional careers and things that we're very good at. Who's going to be on the board? What does that process look like? That to me is a kind of a big category that creates doubt to say, well, who are these people going to be, and where do we get a superintendent? No one maybe can answer that, but that to me is such a huge part of the next part of the work that you've done. And what does that look like? And maybe there's not really an answer, but that's kind of where I'm at right now, to say, well, I understand Dan had said you couldn't vote for the board before the vote. Wow, wouldn't that be awesome? Just to know who the candidates were, even just, hey, let me see your profile. Let me understand who the candidates are. And certainly we could find a great mix from all of these, maybe 10 people that were going to run for the board. And so I guess my question is, how do we pick a board out of the sky? And what does that look like? Such a huge part of the next part that seems to be kind of a black hole and creates some doubt with myself and my peers, outside of the wonderful job you've done on paper and creating such a compelling argument for withdrawal.
Mark, you probably can weigh in on that as much, but I mean, you know, the actual process that would take place to seat a school board would be the same as for any municipal position in the town, which is people take out nomination papers. They have to get a certain number of signatures on that. You then go through some meet the candidate nights and things like that, where they'll be able to explain what they are, who they are, and then there is a vote on those positions. So you know, depending on who takes out, you know, essentially depending on who takes out papers, it's a little hard to say. But you know, for you to make the statement that you may not, you know, that you're not qualified, may not necessarily be true, because one of the qualifications is a desire to make sure that the school is as good as it can be. And you know, if someone can go in there with that attitude, they may not be an expert in law, they may not be an expert in accounting, but you know, it's you need that broad base across there, because what you're looking for is different ideas, different opinions that can get out there. So Mark, if you want to add more to that.
Oh, absolutely. I'll be happy to jump in. You know, I really get the sense that you have a strong community in Raymond, a strong professional community. And you have folks that I hear from Kate and others that have a high volunteerism quotient, really, a lot of parents and so forth in the schools. And that, I think it gives you a great base for school committee membership. You also, you know, once you're not very far in the process, you're going to hire a superintendent, and that superintendent's going to provide the support and education and the assistance that school board members need as they make a variety of important decisions, not the least of which is negotiating a teacher contract. You know, obviously that's going to have to be part of the discussion during the budget process, you know, so that there's ample resources in that budget to meet the needs of both those, the support staff and the professional contracts. I have had a mix of people who are superintendents who have retired and are extremely experienced, who are looking for a part-time superintendency 3 times a week, or some of them may be looking for more. But in the previous situations that I've been in, and COVID may change some of this, but you know, we really had candidates that have done an excellent job for those who have withdrawn. And my sense is that for some school administrators, either starting out or who finish their careers, a part-time superintendency with all the experience they have might be just the fit that Raymond needs. Now, if it's a full-time superintendent, obviously you're going to get I think a broader pool, but you're going to have people guiding you through the process when you hire the school administrator, and you've got your principals there as well. And Chris is a great resource. You know, it's a daunting process. I identified, 1,000 steps that have to be taken and in order to make this all happen. But a lot of those are fairly routine steps, and experienced administrators will find that not particularly challenging, but involving the school committee in those decisions will be very important. Using the Maine School Management Association, the School Boards Association, and their resources is great as well. And I'm sure if WIN does withdraw, they will join MSMA and MSBA, and they have policy resources and staffing resources as well in order to educate new board members, etc. So there are resources out there. And my son-in-law is Canadian. I think the world of him. And, I think you'd be a great school board member.
So can you unmute?
Did we lose her?
No, I'm still here. Thank you for the explanation. I agree with you. There's such a great group of people to pull from, and that's a really thorough answer. I appreciate that, and I think that when we have discussions with our peers, that it's important to share as much as we can for facts, but also just say, hey, it's okay, and there are other ways to do this. We're all of us kind of on the fence and just really looking at it. I want to just say out loud, just for comment, I think that because of the teacher contracts and COVID, wow, what a tough time for your team to have gone through this process and culminate, because I do think that doubt is there, but I appreciate the answer and how diligent that you've been with the facts, because that's really how I'm going to make my decision. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I add something, Ralph, if I may?
Yeah.
The school board will be elected in staggered positions. Remember that. You're not going to vote 5 people in all with 3-year terms. So you're going to start with a 1-year term, 2-year term, 3-year terms, so that eventually you get into a 3-year cycle rotation, so that you're not voting out an entire school board or voting in an entire school board all at once. So it'll be a 1 year, probably 1 person 1 year, 2 people for 2-year terms, and then 2 people for 3-year terms. And then the following year, those rotate through until everybody has a 3-year term. So you may have people with experience who say, I only want to do this for 1 year. I'm going to run for that 1-year term.
Sure.
Is that right, Mark?
Yes, that's correct. That is correct.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah, looks like we have that phone call that came back in, so.
Yes. And I misspoke before. It is *9. That's correct, Katie?
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So this is Peter Levitt. I guess I'm going to kind of go with in Joe's opening. He mentioned, there was a lot of talk at the last video meeting about budgetary stuff. And although I've got a list of things that I question about how this budget was developed, I'm going to choose to make a comment about the presentation that Joe did in his opening. And it had one of the reasons for withdrawal from the RSU being the inequity in the RSU school board. And so I guess my comment is this: in order to believe that it's one of the reasons for withdrawing from this RSU is because of the makeup of the school board, the RSU school board, which is 6, I believe, members from Windham and 3 members from Raymond. You'd have to assume, if that's a reason to leave, that number one, the integrity of the board is questionable. Meaning that, my understanding of boards is that, especially when you have, you're representing more than one entity, what you do as a board member is you vote in favor of what's best for the students. not the community in general, but the students, and within your responsibility. And also, you'd have to assume that the votes of the board would consistently be along community lines. And my understanding is that that's not true. Maybe Kate or someone can refresh just for everybody listening. What have the votes been? I mean, were they generally 6-3? And then the other question is as far as the representation of the Raymond community in the RSU board. They would have to be demonstrating integrity by voting for what they felt was best for the student population, and so those votes would be definitely 3-6. Also, refresh me if I'm wrong, because people are talking about the whole democratic process of electing a school board. Aren't the school board members elected by members of the community that they live in? And if that's the case, then the members from Raymond on the RSU board are representing the citizens of the town of Raymond, duly elected, to represent the best interests of all of the students in the RSU. So, maybe Kate could address that a little bit, and we could have a little better idea of what those votes were like. I'd hate to think that a large portion of this whole process really comes down to conflicts and personalities between a couple of boards. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm happy to answer. There has not been a vote that I have seen. And Janny, correct me if I'm wrong, because you have been on the board longer than me, if there has ever been a vote that has been split by town. In fact, in my 2.5 years on the board, we have never sat there and said, I'm just representing Raymond or I'm just representing Wyndham. We very much all have some great conversations. We don't all agree all the time, but there's been times when Anna hasn't agreed with a vote that I've made, and we're from the same town. So again, we have never done town line votes. We have always thought about the entire district. I can even think of instances where some of the folks from Wyndham will be sure to make sure that they're thinking of the students and the faculty and the buildings in Raymond. So no, you're absolutely right. It does not come down to a town vote.
May I jump in on that one?
Yeah.
No one is questioning the integrity of our school board members in the least. There are 3 really good people who represent Raymond on the RSU school board. I actually even recruited Anna Keeney to run for the school board. So I am not questioning anyone's integrity. But difficult votes have never come up. A difficult vote will be to vote to shut down Jordan Small Middle School. That will be a difficult vote. Now, I don't know how our members on representing Raymond would do that, but I, as a Raymond resident, would not want to see Jordan Small School shut down. That is
which it's not. I mean, it's not something that's even been remotely discussed. It will be in front of
you at some point over the next 3 years.
I mean, Joe, we just added a 3rd grade teacher. So clearly enrollment in Raymond isn't going down to the point that we need to shut down a school anytime soon. We just added a 3rd grade teacher.
Right.
Where is Wyndham on the list for a middle school?
They're up there, but they're not building a middle school to house Raymond students as well. They are building a middle school to house Wyndham students. Look at Wyndham's population. Look at the developments that are being added in there. They are not saying that we are going to make this so that it can be both towns that have a middle school. That's your assumption. That is absolutely your assumption.
It's an educated guess on my part.
Okay, that is still an educated guess is still an assumption.
No, an educated guess means you have a surety that there will be a large middle school built for the RSU and it will not be in Raymond.
There will be a large middle school built for Wyndham middle school students, and Jordan Small will remain the middle school for Raymond students. That's
Well-
my educated guess.
Okay, great.
Historically,
can I say
go ahead, Teresa.
Can I say something? Only because, Kate, we've seen it. We've seen it with the select board. We've seen the paperwork that they came and they gave it. And it was Katrina Sangster and Diana, and I can't think of who the other person was. But that is actually what was presented. And so we have seen the colorful, the school bus coming out of the garage as to the options. And so it's not like we're making this stuff up in our mind. And honestly, I would have found, I'm looking for the paper and I will photocopy it. I will send you what was out there. It really was. It's an option. And what my fear is it may come back around again, because I know you guys are building the middle school right now for the Wyndham. And what's happening with that is you cannot guarantee, and I know you're making an educated guess, but you cannot guarantee that say, okay, guess what? The population's low. We've got these costs and we've got to cut somewhere. We don't want to cut students, services. We don't want to cut teachers. Where can we cut some costs? Well, we can look at maybe the buildings. It was there. It has been out there before. And that is a fear of mine. If we lose a middle school here, and then that leaves just an elementary school here. They've talked about sending the 5th graders over to RES, and then sending 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So it's not an assumption. It's just, this was presented to us before. So this is a fear of ours, is what it is.
So it's based on what happened previously. So let's look to the future, right? Let's not think of the past. Let's think of the future. We have put money into Jordan Small.
Right. Well, and I understand that, but also if you got off the board.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. But if you got off the board, you can't guarantee what that next thinking is going to think. Do you know what I mean? It's not, yeah.
Again, we've added a 3rd grade teacher. Again, the numbers are up there. So that's something that happened in the past. I really would hope that this group could maybe not keep looking in the past and look to the future. Things were really different in 2009. Education was really different then. And let's look at the future. And it's not that Wyndham is building a middle school to shut down Jordan Small. That has never been brought up. That has never been discussed in any of these conversations about Wyndham Middle School. Not once.
People that forget history are doomed to have it repeat itself.
Right.
Janie Cummings is the next one.
Did you have some questions? Oh. Did you have some questions before me, Kate? Because I know you had your hand raised before.
I do have a list, but I'm waiting for my turn.
Yeah.
Okay. A couple of comments, and then I do have questions. First, I beg to differ about making difficult votes. Difficult votes have come up a lot. The ones that we just did recently about whether to go to a hybrid or a full distance model was one. Tomorrow, Wednesday, we're going to be talking about adding sports and the difficulties of that. So that's a hugely difficult decision to make. The shared maintenance facility was a difficult vote. And I voted for the shared maintenance facility, despite the fact that I knew that some people in Raymond were against it. So I would beg to differ that we had, I voted for the shared maintenance facility because I felt that was the right decision for the RSU. Okay, to get to the questions I have were, Marshall, did you include a curriculum coordinator in your CIA budget?
Well, that's what the CIA is. If I understand, it's curriculum, instruction, and assessment.
Right.
There's a staff in there.
Okay, so the coordinator is in there for the 258.
Oh no, it's not in my budget. It's in your budget, Janie, under CIA.
Right. I understand. I understand that the curriculum coordinators are in our budget. I'm asking if in your budget you're including a curriculum coordinator.
My budget is a copy of your budget, Janie. We've tried to explain that.
Okay, but you're doing all the testing and everything in this the NWEAs and all the,
No, that's not part of the budget process on how to run your school or what happens in your school. I carried forward a curriculum program from your V9 budget.
okay. And about the bus maintenance, there was some question about the buses fitting inside, and Teresa said that Nathan had measured, and well, the inside of the bus garage is, or the bus bay is 47 feet.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
I measured it tonight.
On the
I went up.
inside? On the inside?
Yeah, on the inside. I went up tonight with the tape measure. Yeah, I did.
Okay, that's just not the information that I have. And our largest, just to continue, our largest bus is 42 feet long. So that would be 5 feet, essentially. And I find that questionable, but if you say that, you know, that's, so could we take a bus up there and drive it in?
Can I respond to this?
Sure.
Can I ask, I guess I'm really kind of curious. I went up with the tape measure tonight because I understand Alyssa Messer was also up there tonight. So I really wanted to see this. The buses are 42, the garage is 49. We put the hood up to make sure. But when you put the hood up, they're 43. And you don't work on a bus over top the hood, you work from the sides. And it is going to be tight, it really is. But there's nothing stopping us from putting, if you take all the tools out that are just happen to be there because they just happen to be there, take it all the way up to the wall, it will fit. We went outside, we even measured the bus, and we had a few of the public works out there that were verifying it too. So I know that this is the second time that you have brought up that it's not your understanding. But so I went up there tonight, and I have 49 for the garage, 42 for the buses, and 43 feet up with the hood. So we're about 6 feet that we're, and it's like I said, it's going to be tight, but we can also knock out the back wall a little bit and add some more space back there too. So I guess I don't understand where this line is going. Are you saying that we just can't do it? Paul used to do our buses, but I was corrected from Nathan and said they were smaller buses, but I did take the tape measure up there tonight and it was at 444, I think it's when I went up there. Okay. So I personally did, Nathan did, and Alyssa Messer was up there this afternoon and did.
Alyssa's been trying to raise her hand and has not been able to do that. So I just saw that information.
Up now.
Okay. The other question I have is that 2 years ago, we had a special ed increase of $900,000. It was an unexpected increase. $400,000 of that was Raymond children, and they were, and it was children from CDS. So I'm questioning as to how we could absorb a cost of $400,000 in 1 year, in addition to the regular special ed costs. I'm not asking, this is just a comment. I don't really need an answer because I just think that's something that needs to be thought of. So thank you.
Well, let me take that one, Jenny.
Okay, thank you.
There's a couple things that would come into play here. It's the same thing that would happen if you had a student move in that needed an out-of-district placement. How do you handle that?
Right.
You handle it by shifting costs or taking more from another pot. And I don't know where you got the 900,000. I think I remember seeing that there was a substantial increase, and it wasn't an increase. It was a reduction in fees coming back from the state, if I'm correct. And the town has to do what it has to do in those cases. And again, I go back to the out of district placement. I understand there's one, perhaps two in the pipe. So.
It's happened in the past, and Raymond taxpayers have always stepped up to fund special education.
Well, they have to. It's the law.
Yeah.
Yes, but they
it's not
did
stepping up.
You're making it sound like we would never do it because, oh my God. But no, we have done it many, many times.
No, I'm not
I know,
saying,
but you're making it sound like it was this generous thing. You legally have to.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a moron, Kate.
In that case.
I
in
did
that
not say
case-
that.
in
Actually, I would never
in-
say that, to
In
be
that case,
honest.
it's not a question. We legally has to be done. Legally has to be done. There.
legally has to be done.
Yeah.
Can I ask
So it's not a question.
Can I
It's
ask
not
you
a
a question?
question anymore.
Can I ask you a question? A comment came up that CDS, Child Development Services, might have to go to the town costs. Does anybody know anything about that?
To the district costs.
To the district?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, yeah.
It's legislation that was on the table previously with our previous administration. It was, I looked into this. It died with the Senate, I think, but should our administration change in the future, that's something that certainly could come back. Most states actually have CDS is handled by the district.
Okay.
So that's something that absolutely could come back. I think really the concern with this was the comment around shifting costs or taking it from another area. Janny's saying how we had this unexpected cost come up, and yet we did not have to decrease services or shift funds. Take any funds out of, you weren't necessarily saying this, Marshall, but I'm just saying we didn't have to take any funds out of regular instruction to help support the special ed costs that we legally do need to cover. So,
And that was not the assumption. The assumption was it would come out of the town funds. There's no other place.
Okay.
Jenny, let me come back to you for a second. You mentioned that there was a $900,000 shift, of which 400,000 was Raymond.
Mm-hmm.
How was that determined?
What do you mean by that?
Because that's almost 50% of the cost was shifted to Raymond. How did we wind up losing that much?
I don't know what you mean.
Losing?
We didn't lose anything. These were children we found out were moving in. They were children primarily from CDS moving in. There were 56 that were that came in with very high needs, and a portion of them were from Raymond.
So what you're saying is about 30 were from Raymond, or 25 were from Raymond.
Well, it depends on what their needs were, but $400,000 was from Raymond.
Okay.
So for example, if a child came in that needed a one-to-one aid.
Oh, I understand the process. I didn't understand the division.
Okay, I see what you mean. Okay, I'm done.
I'm done. Thank you, Janny.
Phyllis has been asking.
Oh, I'm sorry. Next is Kate, and I inadvertently took your hand down. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thank you. So I have a question, and I guess I just wanted clarity on this piece, Marshall. You had said that the budget that you submitted to the commissioner, I just want to make sure I heard you right, a $1 million error in?
Right. I made a typographical error back in February, which I caught. And you know that because I sent you an email about it.
Yes, but my question is, did you catch it before it was sent to the commissioner to sign off on conditional approval?
I'd have to look at the dates. My guess would be no, I did not catch it.
Okay.
But I'd have to check the dates to make sure.
All right, thank you. I have comments just on the presentation. The first one was Marshall's comment about a school resource officer, that we will have one. There is one that will be coming to Jordan Small Middle School this year. And you made a comment that a Wyndham police officer can't come to Raymond, which actually we have received approval from Sheriff Joyce that it is okay for that Wyndham police officer to come into Raymond.
And that's
so
fine.
Just wanted to. I know.
Yeah, that's information that I'm not aware of. That's fine. I'm glad to hear it.
That is new, because we were told before that they couldn't come into Raymond. Okay, that's cool.
They can.
Good.
They can.
Go
So
ahead.
I just wanted to clarify that. And then just that top bullet point where you talk about the secondary costs and how they're at the state rate. You do have in parentheses, including special ed, which does make the assumption that we have special ed and the secondary costs are both at that state rate, when essentially the special education costs are billed separately. So I would just ask that maybe for the next presentation, we clarify that, just because it does look like you're saying secondary costs including special ed, are billed at the state rate. So that's just my request.
Okay, again, you're splitting hairs. I was given that number by administration. Do this and add $10,000 per special ed student for budget purposes. That I can't
Well,
do
I don't-
anything other than rely on information that was given to me.
No, and that's fine. I'm just saying when you do the presentation, perhaps we should take that out of the parentheses because it just gives the assumption that that the state tuition rate is including the special education costs when it's not. Those are billed separately. That's all I'm asking. I'm not trying to split hairs. I'm just trying to put facts out there.
Yeah, we'll consider it.
Okay, so you're okay. I'm going to leave that. I just have a question on the revolving renovation funds. So that was included in the withdrawal agreement that Raymond would take on those costs for that. And I just wanted to see if that was in the budget that you are presenting today.
I cannot answer that because I was not part of the negotiation team and I'm not sure what the amount was. We do have 100,000 in there on contingency. I'm not sure that that was chewed up with that or not. I'd have to throw that back to either Joe or Mark on that one. It was my understanding that there was no capital budget for either building. So I relied on that statement.
The revolving renovation funds includes a forgivable amount as well as an annual repayment at zero interest. And I think it was under OEM, but I'm not sure without doing some checking as to
Which the Raymond taxpayers voted for in the last election.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. It's for some great security enhancements.
Oh, it's a wonderful program.
And other things. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it was great work by Chris and his team.
Yeah. And Mark, since you're unmuted, I actually have a question for you. And I found some information from when the town of Andover withdrew. They were unaware of a surcharge that they had to pay. Does that not exist now, or does that still exist? It was a surprise to the taxpayers that they had to pay a surcharge per tuitioned student. It was approximately $1,200 a student. Does that still exist? Is that something we may need to be aware of?
I was not involved with Andover. So,
oh, I'm sorry.
So, that was one of the communities. Dan, I think, might have been involved with Andover, and maybe he can comment. I'm not familiar with that surcharge. So in any of the other situations I've been in, but Dan, can you comment on that?
Yeah, it may be in reference to a debt calculation that was part of the agreement, but that is not part of this agreement. So I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to, but the amounts that Raymond would be paying to Wyndham are contained in the agreement, and they don't include that type of debt factor.
Okay. Yeah, it was a quote that I had found that they were, actually the quote was that Andover was unaware of a one-year withdrawal surcharge that requires them to tuition students at a greater rate than the school average, which for them was approximately $1,200. I just saw that and I just wanted to question it to see if it was something that we would need to be aware of, so we weren't caught off guard.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what that refers to.
Okay, thank you. And it could be something that's out of date. I have no idea. It would be interesting to see if that is something that's still around, because I think we should know about that. And then my last comment for now, and it actually might be it for tonight for me, is in 2015, and I know Joe and Teresa, you were part of the withdrawal committee. Two of the reasons that you were saying that we should not withdraw was, one of them was the representation for 9 and 12 students that go to Wyndham High School, which we do know that a very significant portion of our students will be going to Wyndham High School. In fact, in the withdrawal agreement, we have to have a certain amount that go there. And then the other one was that if we withdrew, that there would be limited opportunities for co-curricular programs. We already know that there will be students at the middle school that will lose the opportunity to participate in sports like skiing, swimming, indoor track, field hockey. So those were reasons in the past to not withdraw. And I guess I would like to hear why you've changed your mind on that now, where it may not be a reason for you.
Can I jump in for 1 second, please?
Sure.
Kate, I need to understand the difference between co-curricular and extracurricular. I think you're talking about extracurricular, is that correct?
Well, so they would be playing, well, the sports would be interscholastic. Would actually be the right word there.
Yeah.
Well, they'd be playing other schools.
But they would come in under the extracurricular budget, is that correct?
It comes under our athletic budget for that piece, so.
Well, okay, then let me go backwards, and I'm not trying to argue with, I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Co-curricular to me is math club, Spanish club, things that happen inside the building. Okay. Extracurricular is sports, happens outside.
All right.
Well, co-curricular could be intramural type sports.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Raymond's always
and that's
had
where maybe we are
teams.
splitting hairs on that one, but
Raymond's always had sports teams in the past, and
Right.
they can, at the high school level, that's different. They're going to have the same opportunities as everybody else. It's at the
but
middle
this is
school
not
level.
high school. Sorry.
It's at
Go
the
ahead.
middle school level that you might have to go to another school to have the opportunity. Just like you have a merger of hockey teams because there's not enough players, you can do that, and it will be up to the superintendent to have a discussion with other middle school superintendents to try and field a sports team.
So I guess I would just argue that I happen to know someone who participated in skiing at the middle school level, and it was at no cost. So to even say that he could do the rec program wouldn't work out because he would have had to have at least paid for a ticket to go to Shawnee Peak. So this young man got to participate in middle school level skiing at Wyndham, and he's a Jordan Small student. So I get it that sure, maybe he could go somewhere else, but that would also mean that this student would have to, advocate for themselves to get to that other place, which I don't know. There's not many kids at that age that really feel comfortable talking to adults and trying to say, hey, can I do this? So we're just losing opportunities for our students. And I don't know how many places will take one off kid from there. I get that hockey teams have combined, but that's generally because there's a group of kids, not just one or two. So I'm just concerned that I don't want to overlook these very few low numbers of students that are having this opportunity. So they would be losing that. So
can I take
and it was something that was brought up before.
Can I take that one?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Marshall.
Was this competitive skiing?
Yep.
Okay.
And that's just one of the examples. There was also track and swimming.
Okay. I think that I mentioned to you last time that we spent a lot of time and a lot of money in developing a recreation department in Raymond. And part of the theory was to enhance the ski program, which involved using our school buses. That was the thinking on the recreation department. So that opportunity would be available there.
Yeah, but we also don't have things like, we don't have rec field hockey, so we had a student that participated in field hockey. We don't have rec swimming, and we had a student that participated in swimming. We don't have rec indoor track. There's also the whole level of competition for these kids too. They're getting regular practices. They're getting that competition thing. So again, I just don't want to dismiss that there are students, it may be a handful, but these are students there that are possibly losing out on an opportunity that they would not be able to have.
Why I guess aren't they being maybe promoted during the middle school at JSMS? You know what I mean? As far as putting together a team, from what my understanding is, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, wait a minute, sixth, 7th, and 8th graders can play, but I know I had to think about this, but the 5th graders aren't on one of the teams is what it is. So why can't we promote something at JSMS? I know they used to have a track team, the running team. Why can't they put it out for programs there? But the response I did get when I asked a parent that, and the comment was that they did not think that there would be enough parent volunteers to be able to coach and do it. That was the comment that I got. So my thing would be is I would be like advocating for it. I think it was the high school that they were pushing for a hockey team, I think, and Chris can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I remember wrestling when there wasn't enough wrestling. They took, Wyndham and Raymond kids together. But I think why not promote it here to get as many kids as they can to do, some teams here. Has anybody approached Randy? Has anybody approached the school board to say, hey, we want to start a team in Raymond? Do you know yes or no on that?
They haven't since I've been on. I don't know if it's perhaps that there just aren't enough numbers to put a whole team together. I'm not, or if they're okay with the agreement that they have now. So that I don't have an answer for you for.
Because I guess I'm just wondering too, is if they put it out there, hey, we're starting a field hockey team. Hey, we're starting a track team. Maybe what happens is kids just, like you said, don't know how to talk to the adults. Maybe it takes adults to come in to be able to do that.
Can I go back to the original question of 2015? And the reason we were against withdrawal at that time? The main reason was that Wyndham came forward and said, we will renegotiate the cost share, because at the time it was a 55-45 split. Raymond was paying 45% of the cost. So what we negotiated was a 9% decrease, 3% a year for 3 years in a row. That got us down to 36%, which I believe is where we're at right now. And now you have a whole new administration. I mean, I think Chris was there, if I'm not mistaken. But it was Don Davis. It was Sandy Prince. Yep. That was the administration we dealt with at the time. And yep. Then there was also an agreement that every 5 years, there'll be a look at the cost share to make sure that Raymond wasn't paying a disproportionate share of that money. And that right now at, 36%, I would say we are, since we probably only have 20% of the students, if that. So.
Well, yeah.
Chris
and
brought
I think
that up.
I was just.
He brought that up at one of the meetings, and I think it's when Chris was still assistant superintendent. Right. He had brought that up, that he says that it's going to have to be addressed.
Yeah.
I guess I was just trying to question why that was a reason before to not withdraw, but yeah, it doesn't seem to be something that you're concerned. It was in the mailer that was put out in 2015.
It wasn't a reason to not withdraw. I'm a little bit lost on that.
In the mailer, you had pros and cons about whether you should withdraw or not, and one of the cons of withdrawing was the language of limited, and this is the exact language. I keep looking over here because I have two screens. Limited opportunities for co-curricular programs, and that representation with a new school board would be for K-8, but none for high school.
Right.
And so that's why I guess my question again is why that's not a concern for the committee now. I mean, it is for me, but
at the time. Those were the reasons at the time. And
so what's changed?
I believe that Raymond could do a stronger job of getting local control, working on its student population, working to get a good administration, and do more for the taxpayers. For what we're paying right now at on average 4.7% increase every year, we're going to be paying $12 million, not in the too distant future, for 600 kids. That's a lot of money.
Well, I guess I still haven't really gotten an answer as to why that is no longer a concern.
Because it was
so you're okay
5 years
with the
ago.
limited Okay, so you're okay with limited co-curricular programs?
I think Raymond could field a team if they wanted to.
Yeah, I think we could. I think we could. I think we include the fifth graders.
My whole thing is we keep harping on this budget issue and not looking at self-determination of the town of Raymond.
I'm not even talking about budget right now.
We can have whatever budget that citizens of Raymond want. You know,
Okay.
if citizens of Raymond say we want a $15 million school budget, well, that's what it's going to be. But it's up to the citizens of Raymond to determine that. Right now, Raymond has no say in what that school budget's going to be. Now, you can tell me all about these hearings. Well, we get 3 people going to the hearings. The school board doesn't really listen to what people say, so it doesn't matter. And, you know, you vote through a budget with 4.7% increases. That's just the way it is.
I do actually listen to people when they talk, just so you know. So please don't say that the school board doesn't listen, because I do.
But, you know, people, if you only have 3 people, it's like this survey that went out. We had 98 responses. We don't know if they were all, whether it could be a same person writing 10 times. We don't know that. The survey is not statistically relevant, yet we're bringing it up and saying, oh my God, look, we got 100 people that don't want to, you know, secede. Well,
okay. So, but you're okay with the fact that this whole vote to go into withdrawal was 7% of the town population? So don't pull that.
That was the process, Kate. We followed the process in front of us.
You did not follow the process, Joe. I have asked Dan multiple times to find in the legislation where it said that that vote had to happen in a certain time. He has not yet found it because it does not exist. That you had to have the vote at a certain time after. That was a sneaky vote with 7% of the population.
You had a vote. That was the process. It doesn't matter 7%. When you had to vote. The fact is you had a vote.
Can we get back on questions? Can we get back on questions?
Yeah, because I still haven't gotten my answer, but that's okay.
Part of the answer is also, I mean, I could do 2 things here, but the first is, since that time, the town has brought on a rec director and brought on additional recreation opportunities that did not exist back at that point. That's one thing. The second is, I don't know how you can possibly say that history can't be used in one spot, but now you're using history and throwing it back there. You're totally inconsistent as far as when you want to use history and when you don't want to use history.
I'm only asking what's changed for the future. I am not asking. I'm asking what has changed.
The fact is,
no, I'm not asking for it both ways, Rob. I'm asking
since that time, and the things have changed. At that point, one of the biggest issues was the cost disparity that was addressed, and that was a bigger portion of the whole thing than everything else. Because it put
but it was also building a new middle school that was being talked about.
It also must be brought out that part of that that change on the cost sharing and whatnot said that any new construction in the town would be paid by that town. Bus garage, who's helping to pay for part of that? Raymond. It is not. And that, you know, that's not what the agreement said. Leasing buildings, which are done in town, in Wyndham, that goes into that went into the regular budget. Who's helping to pay for that? Raymond. That's 2 examples of where it's in violation of that. We sent the selectmen and whatnot sent a letter to the school board specifically asking about those 2.5 years ago. It has not been answered yet. So, you know, this is part of the problem is questions that get asked do not get answered. So you seem to have a very hard time if someone doesn't answer a question, but it's all perfectly all right for the school board not to answer a question.
Can I ask a question? Kate, I'm going to ask you, because I guess I just want clarification. Back to the resource officer. I remember Matt Sear, I think it is. Yeah, because we were talking. I went to one of his little, I want to say like a class that he put on for childcare people at one of their trainings is what it is. And I asked why we didn't have anybody in Raymond, and he said because he's technically an employee of the town of Wyndham in the schools. that he cannot come in to the Raymond schools because Wyndham is in Raymond. So you're saying now, I guess I want clarification on who's paying for this, the resource officer. Is that right, Chris? Yeah, okay. Okay, good. So if he's an employee now in Wyndham, he can't come into Raymond then if he's under an employee. So can you unmute Chris, Sue? Yes. Thanks. All right, because that's what Matt had said. I said, why aren't you guys coming into Raymond then? And he said, so is your resource officer, is it a town employee? Is it a school employee? And can they come in Raymond?
Am I unmuted now? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
So first of all, RSU 14 has written 2 COPS grants for $590,000. Those were written by the Director of Community Connections and their grant funded positions. So one of those grants and part of another are being used to pay an SRO position. The RSU will be forwarding that. Here's one of the difficult things is that we are an RSU and we have schools in 2 towns, but working through the Wyndham chief and Wyndham chief and the sheriff, that they've allowed for some movement between the 2. And though that an officer may be a Wyndham employee, they service the RSU, and RSU has schools in 2 different districts. So
okay.
Sheriff Joyce has given us the green light with that, much like Wyndham officers participate in safety drills at RES and Jordan Small.
Okay, so it has changed, which is good because I always wondered why. Okay, great. Thank you.
Could have been worse. Could be like, you could be in 2 different counties.
Are we on to the next?
Alyssa Messer, I know, has been asking.
Yep, she is 3rd on the list right now.
Okay.
Anna, you're next.
Hi, everybody. I've heard a few questions about this closing the middle school and the discussion that went around it. And I wanted to share my experience when that happened. I wasn't on the school board. And I don't think I had yet found the original withdrawal committee, so I wasn't involved then. But it was a lot of discussion, a lot of heated discussion. There were meetings in Wyndham, there were meetings in Raymond. There was quite honestly poor representation from both sides, and there was really outstanding examples for both sides. I remember watching middle school kids stand up at Jordan Small and defend their school, which, to be perfectly honest, in middle school, I would have paid somebody to close my middle school. I would not have asked to keep it open, but it didn't get closed because the feedback from the 2 communities was listened to. So I think that's a really valid example of a time that it was a very difficult decision. It was a very contentious conversation, but the decision was made that was for the best of the communities, and it was based on the community feedback. I think one thing we're missing, we keep going back to the budget piece and how much is it going to cost to put together these teams. And one piece that we keep missing is outside of the budget. I mean, I witnessed it today. Both of my younger daughters are doing 100% virtual schooling. So they're in classes every single day with Wyndham and Raymond kids. And my youngest daughter came downstairs. She's 5th grade, so it would be her first year at Jordan Small. Came downstairs very excited because she'd made a new friend today, and they were able to exchange information so they could message back and forth. And that happens to be a little girl going to school in Wyndham. So when she goes to high school, she's already going to know somebody and she's got friends there. And it's a great example of the communities coming together and using our resources together and building those connections so that we really feel like we're part of one big community. And in my opinion, you can't put a budget line item on that or a dollar sign on it. That's why being part of this RSU has been beneficial, is because we're building those connections and building those communities. And I know it's not a question, I'm sorry, I'm long, but we've had a lot of questions about, besides numbers, what does it look like? And I wanted to share the experiences that we've had so far.
Thank you.
I want to say this is actually a great conversation tonight. It really is. Thank you.
Next is Grace Levitt.
Actually, I think Alyssa really has been waiting a long time. Alyssa Messers, I can wait. So
Okay.
I'll to mute. Thanks.
So Alyssa, I'll unmute you.
Thank you so much. I have been waiting. I've put my hand up multiple times and I'm not sure if it's a disconnect or what, but I do appreciate you taking me. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great. I appreciate everyone and the names that I see across the board here that have put a lot of years into our kids and into our community. I don't appreciate the tone that I hear with one another. There should be mutual respect of differences of decisions. There's no need to attack personally. And I think we should step up our game and be more of an example to our kids in how we deal with differences instead of personally insulting one another. You guys have been in this for years, and I quite literally am trying to catch up in the last 10 days. I'm going to go with a couple questions I had, and then I do want to respond to things that have happened here in the meeting, particularly with my name coming up as well. I've studied the RSU 14 budget, all 59 pages of it, line by line. I have asked questions of the appropriate individuals. I've studied the withdrawal agreement, and I've studied the survey of our town and some of the comments to try and seek understanding from both sides as to why to proceed and so forth. And I guess my first question I was coming in with tonight is I noticed language change in some of the studies that I was looking at in the withdrawal agreement. I noticed, and I was hoping that somebody could give me a reason why it went from the withdrawal committee to the withdrawal board.
I don't know.
Was there a purpose for that change?
I'm not sure what document you're talking about in that.
Which document?
So I can pull it up for you and I can have it for the next meeting, but it has always been referred to in the past and on some of the emails and so forth as the withdrawal committee, and now I see it as the withdrawal board. So I just wondered if that was an error, if that was an intention, if there was purpose behind that, just to understand what that meant.
Just error?
Just not a
choice of
board.
words? Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, I guess I'd have to know where it is. Just there's been no change in what the makeup is. It's
I will go back on that and bring that to you for the next time, so as to not waste time right at the moment here. Since it's not, it looks like it's a mistake. I will bring that forward to where it's posted in the other ones. The second thing is, we need, as a lay person looking at this information, I'm not a teacher, I'm a business and in law, that's my background of looking at details and being able to be credible and comprehensive in the data of what supports the statements as to why withdraw or why not withdraw. So needing comprehensive information to demonstrate a financial benefit is really important in my mind, and simultaneously needing to keep the caliber of education that we have in Raymond right now is very important in my mind. And at the last meeting, I asked if there could be a specific budget placed like the one that the RSU does. And so I guess I'm asking tonight, is the budget that you plan to use for the community, the one that's posted as of right now tonight on the Raymond website, is that as thorough as you're going to be for the community to use for this vote?
I guess I'm not sure exactly where your question is coming from there, because it is we're using the V9 budget, which came from the school, and the adjustments are identified. Any adjustments are identified in the statements that are there. So, to say that there's not detail says that, I'm not sure exactly where that question, where that's missing, as far as, it's from the school's budget that they developed. That's where those numbers come from, with, adjusted as it says in the summary statements in the So I'm not, I'm not sure what, if you're, when you're saying, is that all they're gonna get? That's, that is the budget document.
It is not a comprehensive budget document for a layperson in the town of Raymond to look at and have understanding of where your best estimate and best guess for the data that you have, being as thorough as you can be, to quote earlier, Mr. Eastman. We have 59 pages to look at. So for example, the RSU has given us GPS data to get from Maine to California in every turn, every highway, every exit that I need to take to go. When I look at what Raymond is presenting to me as a taxpayer right now on how to transfer, I'm saying I'm being handed a map of the United States and say, get from Maine to California. Good job, you can do it. It's land all the way from one side to the other. And I want to see you're giving voice to some of the concerns when people are bringing specific things up. But I think half of the questions that we have as a community would be answered if you can say yes. Like, for instance, I have a whole list of when I went through the budget. Are we going to have a backpack program? Do you have a grant writer? Is there Title I in jeopardy? Special education, we've already acknowledged that that's not as thoroughly done. You talk about a superintendent only part-time. I personally have had contact with a part-time superintendent that is a retired individual, and it's a less than stellar experience. And I have also had contact with our Mr. Howell, Superintendent Howell, very specifically and directly last year when there was a life and death situation with a Raymond child on a school bus on Egypt Road. I went before the entire school board and said, I don't have time to get my ducks in a row. I need information and I need to get this changed. And within 24 hours, I had a call back from Mr. Howell, and within 1 week, that school bus route was changed. And if I believe, and I can be corrected from Bill Hansen or Mike Kelly at the bus garage, Raymond was the first bus that rolled off with one of those new sidearms because it was such a concern issue for Mr. Howell and myself bringing it to him. So when you're saying nothing is going to change, we're going to save $1.7 million. For me as a person that is a lay person looking at these budgets, the RSU has given me their budget. I can see, yes, this is how much money they're spending on insurance. This is how much money they're spending on special education. This is how much money they're spending on their technical support and security updates. And then when we're here on these meetings and saying, hey, what about this? This is an important, that is a program that's important to me. There's not answers. There's, well, did you just see that? Well, okay, I can add that in that I don't see clearly. Some of these things are black and white budget issues. It's yes or no. There's nothing to be discussed about it. And we keep asking if this budget that you have on the website right now, which is approximately 3 pages long, is the budget that you planned to have the Raymond people use to make what you're considering an informed decision on a vote in November. It's a pretty basic down-to-earth question.
So again, to answer it again, the V9 budget is the base document. The summary pages take their information from the V9 budget. So you're saying that in one case, the V9 budget is perfectly great, but in the second case, it's not great.
No, I never said that the V9 budget was perfectly great, and I never said it's not great. What I'm saying is, you have said in your presentation to us that you've used the V9 budget to come up with a generalized budget. Theirs is 59 pages, yours is 3. I have a problem as a community member who is a layperson, not in the special ed, not in any teaching capacity, to say there's not something that's being cut out of between 59 and 3 pages. That there's not something, I know for a fact that some of the services that RSU 14 board can provide us in school can provide us. You would not have that playground behind Raymond Elementary School if it were not for the RSU 14 and the board. I managed that program for 4 or 5 years. I know that. You would not have other opportunities. I can only speak to what I know in regards to programs that we're losing and things that we're losing. So in your presentation, you said we would lose nothing and save 1.7. And what I'm saying is it doesn't seem to the layperson looking at these budgets that that's accurate. So I would like to look at them side by side and say, you know what, we don't need that program, that's okay. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That doesn't need to be put in there. And if I can't see that side by side, how can you expect us to make an informed decision? So again, the question is, do you have any intention to provide more detail on the budget? It's a yes or no answer.
The answer is the V9 budget is the details of the budget. You take those, you look, and you'll see those numbers cross over. So yes, the detail is there.
But isn't that just the budget for RES and Jordan Small? I mean, there are things that even Marshall said last time he took out of the superintendent's budget because he didn't believe that it pertained to us. I would love to hear what those things are. Clearly there's a few things in the assistant superintendent's budget that were not included, like the director of community connections. I'd love to hear what those are. So I think those are the things that we're not sure. I get it that Marshall looked at these numbers a lot, and I absolutely appreciate that you put that time into that. But it almost feels kind of like you've just sort of picked and chose what you thought would be best for Raymond, and we're not necessarily hearing kind of what those positions are.
Okay, I want to be absolutely clear that I did not take any 100 or 110 item out of that V9 budget. And 100 is RES, 110 is Jordan Small. It is all in there and it's whole.
Well, what I'm understanding as a layperson is there are a lot of items that are in the assistant superintendent's budget and the superintendent's budget that are not in the 100 or 110 budget that we receive benefit from. Am I incorrect in saying that, school board members?
Can you give specifics, please, of what you say there's a lot of?
So specifics, please, as I'm a layperson. We've discussed in these meetings that there's a director of community relations.
We've already talked about that. That one we talked about, and we said, yes, okay, yep. And then we also talked about the pre-K. What else are you talking about specifically?
That is why exactly I'm asking for a line item. I'm a layperson. I don't work in the field of education. And so I want to see what are you including and what are you not? Most of us that are listening in are not educators. We're not people that know what these line items and positions are. I haven't sat on the school board to know what all these positions are, but I do know that some of them have been brought to the forefront on these meetings. And I do know that for 5 years, I participated in a program to bring a benefit to Raymond that would not have been possible without the support of Bill Hansen and Superintendent, both Mr. Prince and Mr. Howell. Those things are not going to be captured. I don't know what I can ask or what I can't ask because I can't see a budget.
Hey, can we ask Mark? Mark, in the districts that you worked with that separated, what do their budgets look like after they leave? Are they very similar to what was there originally before they left? How much are they more or less? Some, I'm sure some are more than before they left.
Yeah, they vary. I mean, obviously, as I mentioned earlier when talking about budgets, there are always issues that come up through the process. But you remember the 1,700 lines or whatever that will ultimately be, should Raymond withdraw, will give you the similar detail that's in the RSU version 9 budget. I mean, and I think Marshall listed the additional positions, and one of those positions was a superintendent, where he said that he got the feedback he was getting that it should be full-time. And the director of community connections, there was money set aside, perhaps not enough, but in this process, you're not going, we don't have the resources that the business manager, the budget for RSU 14 has, or the personnel that can you know, Marshall's done a terrific job, but until, you know, you have to use that version 9 budget, and here's the additions or the changes, which I think Marshall has been pretty specific about. So it's pretty typical with most communities that go through this process to have a summary budget like you see and talk about the differences between what they currently have and what this budget contains. So I think you know, I understand the concern of the questioner, but I think they've done a thorough job putting it together, and you know, I congratulate Marshall for all his hard work.
So this is the budget that will go forward to the people to make a decision off of.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
So Alyssa, so if you're looking at the V9 budget right now on the assistant superintendent's budget, you can go through there the way it is right now and pick out anything and everything and understand every line of it.
Do you think that's a reasonable question?
I do. I really do.
Okay, because I just told you that I'm a layperson, not in education. And so, no, I'm not going to read a budget on every single thing. What I'm asking is to be able to compare what do we need as a community. I know the things I'm passionate about, and I know those areas that I'm passionate about. I did not realize and recognize all the benefit that the director of community had brought to JSMS and RES, but I do get concerned when I hear all of the community relationships, job shadowing and granting, and then I hear the withdrawal board say, okay, we got an Ed Tech 3 to transport students. That does not equate to me.
Okay,
as a layperson, that doesn't equate to me. So I want to look at those things.
I just asked you a simple question. I did not mean to insult you if that's the way you felt. I wish you would not attack right now. What I'm asking you, yeah, I think you are, but I'm asking you seriously, the version 9 budget, because you're saying there's a lot of things not in it. So we are looking for specifics. I'm going to take away we. I am looking for specifics because I'm not going to use the word we. And I heard pre-K, I heard sports, I heard the director of communications, and I didn't know what that position was. So that's why I sent these emails to Kate to say, what is this position? What does this person do? So I could educate myself. So I'm asking you, because you're asking us, if I'm not mistaken, to list out every line, what it is, what that person does, what the cost is, and we can't do that. So I'm asking you in your head, because you've been here for 5 years or whatever, what you just said, and you have done a lot for the playground. What is it you're looking for that you think we're going to miss? Because that director of community connections, we can't keep beating that one. We already know about that one. I'm looking for other things to add in is what I'm looking for.
So I've been here for more than 5 years. My 5-year example is how I've directly related to the school board and to the superintendent. That was that example. Let's not mix them up. I also said to you that we're looking at the school board. No, this is where things get mixed up, Teresa. This is where words, people start, call it splitting hairs, call it whatever, but truths are not spoken and then they get twisted and people have misunderstandings.
What is the truths that are not being spoken? I've got called out for that, and I'm really resenting the fact because I have a different opinion of being called a liar, and I'm not. So tell me, what are the truths that are not being spoken? Because we're going to clear them up right here.
Okay, so last meeting,
yes,
you were talking about JSMS being closed.
Yes.
And I went directly to one of the committee members that served on that board and said, can you please let me know what the results of that committee were? And who, by the way, served on the committee? Were we actually represented as a town? That's very important to me.
Wait a minute. I didn't understand anything you just said. What committee? JSMS wasn't closed. They were looking to possibly close it. So what exactly are you saying?
There was a committee that was
What committee?
formed. The committee was formed to look at the options for the middle school. It's been talked about tonight. It was referred to you when you referred to Katerina, Marge, Kate, the board members. There were 3 Wyndham residents. There were 3 Raymond residents. There were 2 middle school principals, Randy Crockett and Charlie Haddock. And there was 1 teacher from JSMS and 1 teacher from Wyndham Middle School. superintendent, assistant superintendent, and director of facilities. That made up the committee.
Yep.
I wanted to know from them what the options and what the suggestions were, because it was implied in the last conversation that we had here that there was a strong inference of JSMS closing.
Yeah.
What were the things done? And you've talked tonight about seeing papers come across the deck as a selectman and seeing the consideration. So I know there was a lot of suggestions, and my question to the board was, what was the final recommendation? There were 3 recommendations sent. Only one of them had even the possibility of closing JSMS. And the next steps, there were 4 steps, all of which solicited information from the public, both of staff and from the public in the Raymond and Wyndham communities. And also they suggested an advisory referendum be held. So there was options and discussion having. I go to the people who had something to do with it to find out what was happening. I think if we're going to say something, we need to say it in all of its capacity. Like we talked about tonight, are we taking out some of the technology stuff, but now as a town, we're gonna have to pay for it? You know, there are so many things in a school budget that a layperson is not going to necessarily know how to ask. Our school board members might be better prepared to say, these are the things that we need that we'll lose that we're part of an RSU. I haven't sat in their seat for the countless hours that they have served us and that we voted them in to serve us, in the countless years of experience Jenny's had in our school system, and to be able to provide those answers to you. I don't have that. But what I do know is I want to see, what are we having? What are we losing? Is this great for us as Raymond to lose our 9 to 12 stay with Wyndham High School? Yes, we're guaranteed for 10 years, but what after that? What happens after those 10 years? Because I have a kid that's in that bucket. Does that mean, no, he can't now go to Wyndham? You know, so I think if we're going to say everything, we need to be very, very frank in all of it. That's a part of it. Because
Can I tell you that Raymond students have been going to Wyndham since the 60s that I remember?
Was it the same population in the 60s and growing as it is now, Mr. Bruno?
Raymond? When I moved to Raymond, we had about 1,000 people in town.
Wyndham. I assume Wyndham residents are going to say our residents come first if we withdraw. That's what I assume. That could be a wrong
No, we have a 10-year contract. But Alyssa, let me ask you this. Can you have
what happened after the 10 years? That's what, I'm not worried about the next 10 years. I have a kid that's after that 10 years too. That's what I'm asking.
Have the RSU school board guarantee you things from year to year? Because once they change people, opinions change, ideas change. They can't guarantee you for the next couple of years either that things aren't going to get dropped from a school board.
Absolutely. That's part of being on a board. They have to make tough decisions with more information that you and I know about, right?
Well,
that's what
There are contract negotiations the whole time. I mean, you know, as you approach the end of that 10-year cycle, you go into contract negotiations. Just has been done since the 80s at Wyndham. Every 10 years has been a contract negotiation. We're still going to Wyndham High School.
Yeah, but we're not going back, because I understand Wyndham to be growing, and who knows what the future, if they have too many kids to attend the high school, now they're overloaded and they can't take kids from other schools.
It may happen later.
Yeah, it might.
Oh, that happened to Poland. But backing up, I guess I want to go back to what you're saying as far as you mentioned earlier that I wasn't giving the accurate truth regarding that possibility of withdrawal. I mean, of closing Jordan Small. Joe Bruno was on the board at the time too when they came in.
But that wasn't the only option that was given. There were several.
There's 4 options given, and 3 of them at least were closing Jordan Small.
And Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but Wyndham could always vote to withdraw on their own if they have not enough room for our students.
I mean, I think that we all realize that Raymond students are a big benefit to Wyndham. I mean, the tuition money should Raymond withdraw, and that's the question to be determined in November. Right. But those resources coming from Raymond, should Raymond withdraw, are going to be a very valuable part of the Wyndham budget. And I see that all across the state. Tuition resources are going to be a big part of providing the education for all students at Wyndham High School. So, you know, I would be very surprised if Wyndham would ever let those resources go away. It's just
because it's millions of dollars. As a matter of fact, when the Wyndham High School was built and they got permission from the state, the Raymond students were included as part of that calculation to fund the high school until it was paid off. And that was, I believe, 2001, because I sponsored the bill and I worked with Sue Gendron and I worked with Bill Diamond to get it done.
I think you need to recognize that as community citizens and as people who are wanting to be responsible with the resources that we have in Raymond, we are justified in asking the question, where do these monies go? And we are justified in asking the questions, what is best for our students? I have 3 kiddos in this school system. I chose Raymond because of its school system. I do like the idea of control. However, it has not been yet demonstrated to me under any circumstances that we haven't had a representation or a fair representation on the RSU school board with either Superintendent Howell or Mr. Prince. My personal experience has been the exact opposite of that. It has been forthright. It has been supportive. We have a gorgeous playground and playfield outside of RES that we worked on with the military to provide. None of that would have happened. So I can speak to what I've been involved in. I'm trying to educate myself with those 3 documents, the RSU budget, the withdrawal agreement, your budget, and then kind of secondarily that study that you put out, which I appreciate you guys letting us take a look at that to see kind of just a small portion of where people are coming from. I think you need to look at all of the columns, not just one. But I'll finish my comments because others may have something else to say. I want to address my name being brought up on the buses tonight. I did go down because, again, just as I said to you, I went and got a copy from the RSU of the budget. I went and got a copy of the withdrawal agreement. I wanted to follow up on things that 2 and 2 didn't make sense. And is this something I know about? Well, yes, it is. I grew up in an automotive family. I've rebuilt cars myself. I know when you're working on buses, you're going to work from the side of it. I also know you need to lift it in the air. Mm-hmm. Is the new facility able to lift it in the air to work on it as much? Yes. Is ours? He told me today it can. It's not the same, but he told me it can. There are some things, yes, that we're willing, that are able to make work. And there are other things that no, it's not for the community, probably going to work. So it's our job to research and ask the questions as to, does it fit? Is it there? Do the lifts still work right now if we were to drive a bus in there? I was interested. I'm a member of this community and I had every right to go down there and ask the question. And it's about being thorough and trusting what your representatives are saying. And when 2 and 2 doesn't add to 4, I'm going to question it.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't have gone down there, Alyssa, not at all. And actually, I think that's why I did, because I wanted to see for myself. So yep. I'm not saying no, you should not question that. I'm not saying no, that you shouldn't have gone and seen it for yourself at all, by no means. That's why I went, because I wanted to see it and verify it, because Janny has said twice that wasn't her understanding. Kate's getting tired of sitting. So I'm not knocking that you went down there.
So I also wanted to bring up, I did serve on the committee regarding the loss of privileges for some of our kids at Raymond, and our concern that we had seen several programs just because of the sheer number of kids of our school being lost and some of those kids having to go over to Wyndham. I did want to just make a note because others were bringing up asked the question at the last meeting, at what level are we talking about grade-wise involvement? And I can tell you that my daughter, who was in 3rd grade last year, participated in a field hockey program at Wyndham. And there were, I believe, 4 other Raymond children that participated in that program. That is not something that we have in Raymond. So there are even lower than the middle school program, elementary school programs for our children that are not offered because of numbers in the Raymond community. So that is something that is not just a middle school problem, it's also an elementary school issue about having numbers for our kids and the wider spectrum of the RSU being able to provide opportunities that we would not have on our own. I'll leave my comments and questions for there tonight. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
So next is Grace Levitt.
So yeah, it's getting late and I'm fine with just coming to another meeting. I just want to, wanted to comment on the history. I think I said this at the very first hearing before the vote on moving ahead with forming the withdrawal committee, just very briefly. Yeah, my kids are grown, but I will never forget sitting in the cafeteria at Jordan Small School, hearing the presentations about what the options were for 7th grade, because we sent our 7th and 8th graders to other school districts, and being, the mother of a daughter who was distraught about the fact that her friends were going every which way. Well, that's the whole school choice thing. But what was really nice when the RSU was formed was, yeah, the vast majority of kids went to Wyndham, and that was the RSU. And so that sense of community was no longer going to be something that was lost. It was something where they could maintain childhood friendships instead of just wherever. Somebody mentioned something about Poland before. We were in a situation that year where there were some school districts that were either strictly limiting how many students they would take because they were full. I can't remember if it was Great New Gloucester that wasn't taking any more Raymond kids, even though that was a hop, skip, and a jump away from our house and would have been nice. But, well, the Poland regional stopped taking. They took very few, but I think Great New Gloucester also was one that was not taking at that point. Again, there are no guarantees in any of this conversation. It's just even more concerning because right now with the whole pandemic, there's even fewer hopes of any kind of guarantee on what costs will be. So I guess just portraying this as a huge cost saver to taxpayers without any kind of impact on the kids is somewhat misleading. Maybe it will save money. Maybe it won't impact kids negatively. I think it won't save money. I think it will impact the students. And I certainly think down the road that both of those things are true as well. My opinion, it's not anything I can base on fact other than what my experience has been. And as far as another piece of history, when we were our own school district, I can remember being stressed just going to town meeting, hoping the school budget would pass because it was up to just a handful of voters in Raymond that voted on that school budget if they showed up at town meeting. And it was often on at a time when parents of school age kids couldn't get to town meeting. And those were the ones that were going to support the budget, and others were just looking at the dollar, not at what we were offering our kids. So
but
I hope we don't go back
Grace,
to
there
those.
was one school budget turned down in the 30-something years that I remember. Once.
Well, it was always
an
close.
11% increase in the school budget. And that's when we used to have 200 people show up to town meeting. And also, Wyndham has always had the majority of Raymond kids. Always.
Right. And they will, in this agreement, we'll be paying for at least 50% plus one, whether kids choose to go there or not. So will there be pressure to go there if, for whatever reason, they choose not to? It's going to cost the town more if they go elsewhere. If we don't have
Grace, come on, you know that most of the kids are going to go to Wyndham.
Well,
that's just a fact of life. That's the way it works.
Again, Joe, that's not a guarantee either. So you're stating something as though it's fact when it's not actual fact. And I think that's part of
I'm going on history here. For the last, let's say, 42 years.
Joe, I'm not going to debate it with you. This isn't something to debate. I'm stating what I think. You've stated what you think. It's been quite clear what you think. So will that happen again? Perhaps, maybe, I don't know. I'm just stating what my experience has been and part of the reason why I don't feel this is the best thing for students or for the town.
But Grace, if I remember, your daughter went to Greeley.
That's exactly. You know why? Because her friends were going to 5 different schools. And there was just no way that, she was going to be able to go to 5 different schools herself and maintain those friendships. And so what worked best for our family was to have her go to Greeley. And, she had other friends then that she made, but she lost those childhood friendships, as did the younger daughter as well. So You know, if we had been an RSU, there wouldn't have been any question. They would have been at Wyndham High School, and that would have been terrific. That was all. I'll save the rest. I'll be back, but I'll wait for another meeting. It is getting late, and there's still another hand up, I think. Thank you.
I think still have one more with a hand up.
Yes.
How do you guys see the hands? I don't even see the hands.
Mandy.
Over on the right.
Mandy.
If you click on participants, you get a list on the right.
Oh, now I see.
I got a lot to teach you, Teresa.
I didn't see that. I'm like, oh my God. All right.
I'll save most of my questions for the in-person meeting, but I just wanted to touch base when we started talking about wanting to have more sports here in Raymond. I've been involved with the rec department for 6 years, going on 7, and as a really small community, thinking that we're going to be able to offer more sports in the middle school program or even into maybe the higher grades in the RES isn't, I personally don't feel like it's something that is capable, where if you want to bring in a track, a swim, a wrestling, we barely have enough kids to make a soccer team, much less adding all of these other sports to the school. And then as far as coaching after school, you have to find a parent that has a flexible job that can be there by 2 o'clock. And then what sort of stipends would you offer to coaches to teach? Because it is a large commitment, and families are busier these days more than they've ever been. So it comes back to trying to remember what's best for the kiddos and what programs that we have, and being able to provide opportunities where if we were to pull out of Wyndham, where could our kids go? Will it be more difficult to find other schools that will take 1 to 2 kids? Or is it just one of those you're kind of left hanging to figure those things out on your own?
Mandy, you mentioned questions for an in-person one.
Yep.
I don't think I have you down for that. And we
You
have to
do. You RSVP'd me already.
I did? Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, try to keep track.
That's right.
Kate, do you know what the stipend is they pay for the coaches?
I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay.
Some are teachers, some are just coaches. I think that's what they used to do. So I'm not sure.
I know that, yeah, because I know that when the sports teams here, they did, they paid some stipend, but I don't know specifically how much it was. And I heard it. I know it varies a little bit up at in Wyndham, based on the sport, based on a number of different things. So.
And I'll save the rest it's getting late, so I'll save the rest for the in-person. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more, Sue?
There are no other hands raised right now.
Reminder that the next meeting, Thursday, is a noontime meeting. It's going to be at the East Raymond Fire Station. If people, I know a number of people have sent in reservations. So if it is something that you want to go to and you have not sent a reservation in, please do that. We'll try it. At this point, there appears to be a good amount of room, but it's just we have to be cognizant of the space requirements and things like that in the building. So that's why we're asking for that. Those meetings will be under the protocol.
Where is the East Raymond Fire Station?
Oh, it's right down
a block down from the town office.
Town hall.
Okay, I wondered if that was it. Thank you. Sorry.
Wait, where is it? It's not the big one, it's the small one?
It's next to the big bus garage.
I was thinking it was down the big one.
You're talking the one on Egypt Road and 85.
We could get more people in there than we could in in the other. So the
I'm sitting here by myself.
protocols will be masks will be required in the building at all times. So the chairs and things will be set up to have the separation that's required. So we look forward to seeing anybody at that meeting. Any other questions? Hey, thank you all.
Good night.
Thank you.
Nice night.
Thank you.
Good night.